if you can bear with me for just a few minutes. We have such a well-known panel of gentlemen on the stage, and I would like just to ask a question of the gentlemen and so that they can share. Their perspective of women in martial arts, and do you find a difference between teaching men and teaching women martial arts? If you could just take a few moments and answer that question so we get your input, because I think it's very, very valuable.
Motivation is, I suppose, it's going back to what some people said earlier. We don't teach karate, we teach people. So we teach them to be confident, we teach them to believe in themselves. So I think I was watching the other day about people how they train, and we were looking at some people who were just teaching pure sport karate. A lot of the traditions and the mannerisms that we're associated with were neglected. They were wearing sort of casual clothes and they were really disciplined. And yet when the first time a child comes into my studio, I say, "Good evening, sir, how are you?" And I show respect to the child immediately, and I try to give them manners, and I try to give them confidence and respect. And I think those are the things you build the mind first, and you build those attributes, and then you kind of, when you have those attributes in position, then the child is ready to receive how to kick and punch, which is kind of irrelevant if the other qualities aren't there. And as a lot of speakers said earlier, the qualities of discipline, concentration, respect are the fundamentals that people are attracted to in martial arts. And the kicking and punching and that are the instruments or the mechanisms we use to achieve those goals. So I think retention of a student and the motivation of a student, plus I suppose you also need to have that confidence and belief. You need to be entertaining. You know, I remember when I was working in Pasadena with Mr. Trejo, before he taught a class, he said, "It's showtime." And it was like he was there to entertain. And if when I'm in the back office in the studio, my ear is always on the floor, what's happening. And I don't hear a hum and a happiness in the room. I'm not happy with it, but it's always that case. Everybody is happy. They're happy in the room. And one quick thing before I surrender the microphone. Most people look at the Karate Kid movie, you know, they see Mr. Miyagi, and then they also see the kind of disciplinarian kind of instructor. And over many years, I looked at teachers as their mechanisms of teaching and how they teach. And I kind of said, they role model themselves on that disciplinarian kind of hard guy, and they didn't look at Mr. Miyagi. They didn't look at the kind of kind gentleman who had manners and just was kind and gentle. They looked at the other guy, and they kind of got attracted to that kind of hard man and that kind of power. And I think when you're a teacher, you know, karate shouldn't be an attraction to have power over people. It should be to give service to people and help them grow and develop. And that's the important one. And I think in martial arts, the people on this panel here, it's quite obvious to me that the women in Kenpo, the feminine influence, has brought that kindness in, and they have recognized that that's the quality. You know, it's good to care, it's good to love. And it's not this hardness and discipline and violence to a certain extent is an image that a lot of people like to propagate. But in reality, it's what we don't want to see. We want to see the control of violence, the control of the internal energies within us. The dragon and the tiger represent the challenge. The fight is really not with the enemy or the outside, it's the enemy inside. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Women in martial arts. I've had a school for a long time. I opened my own school in 1972, so it's about 42 years. I know that our school, we've had tremendous success throughout the years in competition, but there has been no greater joy than we have realized in our more recent years when Barbara got involved in our school and started thinking about, rather than how many trophies we could win, but thinking about what we could do for somebody else. And as a direct result of that direct result of being in service to people, we found a joy that we've never ever experienced. So the fact that the women are involved in Kenpo has always been a major part of our school, but I don't think that there's any limit to what their contributions could be. I'm proud I'm here tonight. It's the 50th anniversary of the International Karate Championship, and as Mr. Bartolucci said, I know Mr. Parker would be very, very proud of the contributions that were started this evening and will continue. It is our desire and our prayer that the Women's Symposium starts to become, a word I use often, contagious, and other people will start getting that feeling and want to get involved and being a part of this movement. I thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
In my school, I obviously have my two lovely daughters that help me, but also as I began to build a team of helpers and teachers. In the first 15 years, I only taught adults, never taught children. And then when I opened the studio, I realized I had to teach children. People thought it was scary because I'm a scary guy. How could a scary guy teach children? But I realized that I'd have to identify the qualities that I needed in teaching children. And as I trained children and then I brought them through the ranks, I found that nearly 80% of my teachers who teach children are young ladies because they have all the special qualities. And listening to the panel tonight, I realized that decision of just carefully picking people who just happen to be female was probably one of the reasons why my school is so successful. So I'm a very great advocate of lady teachers and the qualities they bring to the school. Thank you.
When I started, there weren't any women or any girls in the school. As a matter of fact, there weren't any, very few teenagers in the school. And if you were a teenager, you got put into the adult class, and if you survived, you can stay. If you didn't, then that was okay. And I see the same thing as the women. And when I started coming up in my school, I started my school in 1977, although I started managing schools for other folks in 1968. Very few women, and if they were there, they didn't last. Then comes the 70s. The women really stood out, really stood up. First it was 2, then 3, the next thing I know I had a dozen in my school. And not only were they good, but the integrity that they had, the technique that they had, and they just brought a whole complete different perspective to how I thought women should be taught or not. Not to cater to them because that's patronizing them. They didn't want that. They wanted their own space. And so talking to Mr. Parker about that, really opened my eyes. There's a place on the map for them, and like I used to tell all the other students, that place is yours, you just have to go take it. And the women have done that. We've had a great, volume of women come through my schools and my organization that really, really stand out. They're not on a national circuit, but you get them in a technique line or you get them training with other folks, and I have to tell you that, they've really carved their own way. Somebody mentioned earlier, one of the ladies here, yes, it takes 5 times, for the women, I think, to get recognized, but they're better for it. As a man or as an instructor, you step back and you can really, really appreciate that. I have several women that have schools, successful schools in my organization, and I encourage them the same way. I don't treat them any different. They have their space on that. They just have to go take it. Okay? So I think with that, the women have really taught me a whole bunch tonight. One of the things one of my students asked me, he goes, can men come into this class? I said, why wouldn't you want to come in? We're going to get a woman's perspective, right? And maybe we hadn't thought about some of the things. I learned about half a dozen things tonight, ladies. Thank you so much.
My son has a saying that says, if you want to make God smile, tell him your plans. My school is in Los Angeles. We're right in the heart of Hollywood, right off of Hollywood Boulevard. And we started in 1996. And we were at a homicide, George, Ryan, and I, and we were waiting for the coroner to come pick up the body. And George is one of filling blanks as students. And the coroner had a delay, and we started talking about my instructor, Mr. White, and his instructor, Billy Blanks, and probably not what you want in the news, but we went off to the side and we were sparring and throwing techniques at each other. The parents got over the coroner, and we said, we're always hanging around these kids that are dead and trying to solve the murders on was trying to solve the murder and figure out who killed them, maybe we could start doing something proactively to intervene. And so we decided right then we were going to start teaching inner city young men that were at risk of becoming involved in gangs or in gangs, martial arts as a vehicle to mentor them to keep them away from gangs. So we started training on the roof of the police station, and that led to renting space at the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs and at a gym, and now we have a school on Hollywood Boulevard. But it goes back to what I said, if you want to make God smile, tell them compliance. The majority of our students are girls. They're not young men trying to stay out of our gangs. We have about 60% females at our school. We've promoted 10 black belts in the last few years. 7 of them are women. 6 of them are women. We're going to have a test August 20th. That's for another female. And so our plan was to do this big old rescue of the male at-risk people in gangs. And what happened is our school is more female than male. And you look around at all the young girls, and from my 31 years of being a cop, you see all the tragedy that happens to young women, young girls that didn't have mentoring, didn't have somebody showing them the way, didn't have strong, positive male role models showing that they cared about them. You know, Mr. White has a saying that before your students care how much you know, they need to know how much you care. And so what has happened with our school is, because it's turned out, and I certainly did not plan it this way, but the predominant amount of our students are young. You know, we don't start kids that are over 18. We start at 6 years old. If they start with us, we'll keep them after they're 18, but we won't start anybody that comes before 18. The majority of our students are females. And we don't even look at it as a trying to make martial arts champions, or trying to produce black belts, or trying to produce wonderful martial artists. That is a wonderful side effect we have. I have 25 students coming tomorrow, and we're going to go home with a whole truckload of those trophies. But that's just a side benefit. The real benefit is, and again, this is a women's symposium, I would say maybe rethink that, and can you break that down farther to future women's symposium? Because you really want to reach out while they're still young girls and get them involved in it, get them encouraged, get them motivated, let them know that there's people there that care about them, and bring them up with a sense of confidence and a sense of self-respect and a sense of dignity that affects their lives and how they carry themselves. If they learn self-defense, that's great, and they will. And if they learn how to fight and become world-class fighters, like some of the ladies here, that's great. But the big part of it is that you use the martial arts as a vehicle to motivate the young girls so they grow and blossom into being confident, strong, effective women. And that's what was the surprise in my school. And that's what I feel is really blessed. And I think that's, as martial artists, that's one of the things that we really need to focus on.
My wife Charlene taught me the difference between power and force. The easiest way to understand the difference is to think of a bull. A bull is very forceful. But put a bull in a china closet and he is powerless. Because once something starts to break, he loses all control. So while men often have great force, women have power, and when we learn to harness the power that they possess, we men become better martial artists ourselves. Thank you.